Welcome back everyone. So some big questions this morning. First one, what's the punishment for incitement back home in the UK? And of course, if we use poor Lucy Connolly as an example, as a precedent, the punishment for incitement is severe. I don't even consider personally that if you study Lucy Connolly's words word for word, that she actually intended to incite anyone. For all I care is what she said. That's not incitement. For all I care is not incitement. But nonetheless, Lucy Connolly is still in jail, is still behind bars for that tweet. The punishment for incitement. So let me ask you, after Essex police have now admitted, apparently, that they bust in, escorted in, brought right to the front of the table counter-protesters in Epping the other night. What's their punishment? What's the punishment for their role in bringing people right to the front of the queue where they knew that problems and temperatures would be raised? But there are two further questions that are even more important. Who and why? Who gave that order? Who came up with the idea of escorting in, bringing in buses, in their own vans? Who came up with the idea to bring those people in right to the front line? Who's responsible for that? And was that incitement? Was that more inciting than Lucy Connolly's tweet? I'll leave you to decide what the answer to that is. The even bigger question is why? Why would you do that? This, for me, is a politically motivated move to ensure that there was trouble, to ensure that the mainstream media got the optics and the images and the pictures that they wanted. This was a politically motivated move to tar the good people of Epping as far-right thugs. And of course, unfortunately, due to the nature of the beast, due to the temperature, due to the fact that people are so fed up and angry, unfortunately, a few people gave them exactly what they wanted, and they will now pay the price. That is why I always call for peaceful demonstrations, only because you are falling into their trap if you give them anything else but. So incitement, I asked you this morning, who was responsible for bringing those people together the other night, which led to violence and led to issues on the street? Who was responsible for that? And if you compare that to Lucy Connolly, then it's actually quite frightening. One is wearing a uniform and has the backing of the government. The other is just an ordinary mum. Now, if anyone doubts any of what I've had to say so far, let's use one of my favourite analogies. You know me, guys, if you've been watching me long enough, I think there's a lot of analogies in life to be had where football is concerned. Let's say that the other night's events in Epping was in fact Millwall versus West Ham. Not a million miles from Epping, right? Millwall versus West Ham. You've got Millwall in one pub in one area and West Ham show up at the train station half a mile down the road. What do you think the police and the police liaison officers would do in that situation? I know very well what they do, and so do you. What we can say safely is what they wouldn't do. They wouldn't round up the West Ham supporters, put them in police vans and take them outside and drop them outside the Millwall pub, would they? They wouldn't do that. Why wouldn't they do that? They wouldn't do it because they know the end result. And if you don't want to talk about football, let's talk about some of the demonstrations that have taken place in London with a pro-Palestinian mob, where individual Jewish people have been told that they cannot get anywhere near the demonstration because it's going to incite the crowd.
Yeah, and at the moment, sir, you are quite openly Jewish. This is a pro-Palestinian march. I'm not accusing you of anything, but I'm worried about the reaction to your presence.
Right? So one Jew is not allowed to get anywhere near the pro-Palestinian mob because the police say that will incite violence and that will incite trouble. We've got beyond two-tier back in the UK, beyond two-tier, absolutely beyond two-tier. We're now getting into the realms of 3 and 4 tier. The police have been completely and utterly politicised, and I'm afraid I don't enjoy knocking the police. I really don't. I wish I could come on one day and give the police credit, but unfortunately, and my inbox tells me that I'm absolutely spot on with my observation, I get email after email after email from former police officers that tell me that the force is no longer what it used to be and the people that are in it are not fit for purpose. And unfortunately, they've been busy recruiting from the hard left themselves over the last decade, the last 2 decades. So this isn't, you can't even blame them for carrying out dodgy orders. I firmly believe that a big percentage of the police in uniform, wearing a uniform today, are nothing much more than Antifa wearing a police uniform. So we're in big trouble where the police are concerned, big trouble. Now, lastly for today, I want to address something that a lot of people have mentioned to me about the reported issues here in Spain recently. I haven't really spoken about it, firstly because it's none of my goddamn business, right? Whatever happens here in Spain is the business of the Spanish, and it's no business of mine. I'm a guest here. I'm here to abide by their rules, their laws, to respect their way of life, and to adhere to any rule that they, throw my way. I'm a guest and I'm grateful for their hospitality. But what I can say is I have not seen one single problem. I have not seen one single issue. The problems that arrived here or arose here a couple of weeks back were miles and miles from me, in an area where I think there's a particularly large community of people from another country. But what I can tell you here is that the police are on a different level, in a different league to our police back at home, in a different league. You do not mess around with the police out here, and they will not stand for any nonsense. I'm going to throw up a WhatsApp message that came from my son-in-law just this morning. And this happens all the time out here. They are on it like you wouldn't believe. So for people telling me in the comments, oh, it's just as bad in Spain, no. Don't believe the nonsense you're reading in the mainstream media. Think about it. They're trying to convince you that Spain is just as bad as the UK. No. I guarantee you, with my hand on my heart, that Spain is at least 30 years behind the UK when it comes to migration. At least, if not more. Living in Spain is like living in London in the 1950s or the 1960s. So the messages that I'm getting saying Spain's just as bad, no. The mainstream media at home are deliberately blowing up anything that happens here in Spain or anywhere else to try and make it look like the UK's not as bad as it really is. Look at what's going on in Greece. The Greeks have had enough. They're fed up. They're done with it. The Spanish ain't going to have it either. The ones that have fallen for it are the French, the Germans and ourselves. And we've got to live with that, and we've got to deal with it. So I go back to what I said right at the very start of the video, incitement. I saw a example of incitement and how the police are willing to and do indeed incite crowds. Last July, I think it was, at the demonstration, the event in London, when they escorted two Palestine flag waving individuals giving the ISIS symbol. They escorted those people right past the Patriots. They did it deliberately, and it nearly caused the riot. It was only thanks to people like Richard Inman and some of the stewards and the security guys that managed to keep a lid on that situation. Wasn't down to the police that it never kicked off that day. In fact, it was despite of the police's presence that it didn't kick off that day, thank God. And after that event, I remember talking about it, and I thought, well, look, should we give the police the benefit of the doubt? Would they really do something like that? Did these people just slip through the net? No, they didn't slip through the net. And if you want any proof of that, look at the events in Epping a couple of nights ago when they bust these people in. It is beyond, absolutely beyond insanity and beyond belief. And for anyone that's a serving police officer watching this right now, or perhaps even more importantly, for anyone who has family, a husband, a brother, a sister, whatever, a son, a daughter, serving in the police right now, I know you're not going to like this. I know you're going to be protective towards them. I know you're going to feel that they do a good job, etc. But you got to wake up and understand that they're carrying out political orders. They're not looking after the people. They're no longer those that protect us. They're those that persecute us. And that is why their reputation is falling faster than you can ever believe. Evidence. You have to believe the evidence. And the evidence is that at Epping the other night, the police deliberately brought people who were going to incite trouble, and unlike Lucy Connolly, they won't end up in jail.